You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for the week of March 6th, 2026. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where our lead story is Republicans in disarray. It's The Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal. Rather than spending half the podcast rapid-firing the dozens of special election results at you, like some cable TV programs do, we'd like to thank Charles Gaba for providing this brief and eloquent summary. Quote, Dems have overperformed by 13 points on average across 93 special elections so far, unquote. Democrats in disarray, indeed. So instead, we're going to spend some time talking about why this is happening and how pundits and political professionals are coping with the fact that none of them have the faintest idea what they're talking about anymore.
The reason this is happening is that Republicans made a lot of promises to a lot of people in 2024. A lot of stupid people, a lot of credulous people, and they are failing spectacularly at delivering on any of these promises. Mm-hmm. Instead, and I want to make this clear, unified Republican leadership.
I think that's the title of this podcast, Luke.
Unified Republican leadership. Mm-hmm. Everything is getting much, much worse. But worst of all, Trump has broken two of the most solemn vows he made to his cult. Vows that brought him their obedience and loyalty.
Yeah, instead of releasing the Epstein files, the Republican president named Donald Trump has turned the federal government into one giant Epstein file cover-up machine, and the MAGA base have bought themselves stupid Watergate.
And now that Republican President Donald Trump has taken us to war with Iran illegally and under false pretenses and really no pretenses, the MAGA base has also bought themselves stupid Iraq war circa 2003.
Yeah, so let's begin at the beginning. This is from a speech by a then little-known state senator from Illinois of my acquaintance, delivered at an anti-war rally in Federal Plaza, organized by groups including the Chicago Against War and Racism Coalition. The rally occurred about a week before the Senate voted on October 11th, 2002, and 2 weeks before the House vote on October 16th, 2002, authorizing the invasion.
I don't oppose war in all circumstances, and when I look out over this crowd today, I know there is no shortage of patriots or patriotism. What I do oppose is a dumb war.
Yep, that was State Senator Barack Obama, 6 years before he ran for president and won.
Yeah, and 14 years later, this was Donald Trump at the South Carolina debate.
Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake, all right? Now, you can take it any way you want, and it took Jeb Bush, if you remember at the beginning of his announcement, when he announced for president, it took him 5 days. He went back. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. It took him 5 days before his people told him what to say. And he ultimately said it was a mistake. The war in Iraq, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives. We don't even have it. Iran is taking over Iraq with the second largest oil reserves in the world. Obviously, it was a mistake. So George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
But so you still think he should be impeached?
I think it's my turn, isn't it?
You do whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. I want to tell you, they lied.
Okay.
They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass destruction.
All right.
And our reaction to Trump as liberal pariahs who've been against the war from day one and who have been media pariahs since we began writing our liberal blogs 21 years ago was not, wow, great, love this guy, how cool he is. Trump was obviously a scumbag. But as we pointed out at the time, Trump was a scumbag who was successfully reading the room of his own party.
He sure as hell was. The GOP base, that's who we're talking about, who had been the loudest and most aggressive supporters of Bush in Iraq and had been seething over it ever since the Bush regime collapsed. That was what the Tea Party was all about. It was half racism, but it was also half rebranding to get the hell away from the stink of Iraq and the Bush administration. So we were kind of amazed. Right here on the South Carolina debate stage, a Republican was finally saying out loud what we had been saying all along. He said terrible words, forbidden words, Blue Gal. And none of the political pros could understand what they were watching. They thought Trump was committing political suicide because speaking out so bluntly against Iraq and calling Bush a liar were accursed words that only a thrice damned liberal would ever use, Blue Gal.
Yeah, but we thrice damned liberals understood what was really going on. He was offering the Republican base something that every other Republican had denied them. And there were a lot of people on that stage.
Yeah.
But Trump offered them absolution, saying to them, they lied to you, and they knew they were lying to you. The war had been a costly and humiliating disaster, but it wasn't your fault, Republican voters, and I would never, ever do such a thing.
Yeah, that last part, that's the promise. That's the oath. I will never do this to you. And you know what? Over at the Bulwark, a few never-Trumpers are finally admitting this. Tim Miller, I listened to him the other day recalling the early days of the 2016 Republican primary, back when most Americans were still treating the campaign like background noise and Donald Trump like a novelty act who would eventually wander off stage. Tim was working for Jeb Bush at the time, and in South Carolina, Tim was sitting backstage thinking, like every other political professional, that Trump was just torching his own campaign. First by attacking the Republican establishment that everybody loved as a collection of spineless cucks and wussies who were too timid to crush crime or do ruthless mass deportations. But Trump didn't stop at calling Republican leaders weak. He also accused them of being spectacularly stupid, incompetent clowns who deliberately lied us into war and then completely botched it. And Miller couldn't believe it. Sure, Republican voters might grumble about the Iraq war, but they would never tolerate open criticism of George W. Bush or anything that even vaguely brushed up against some sort of 9/11 conspiracy talk. This would surely doom him.
Instead, Trump proceeded to win the South Carolina primary in a landslide.
Yeah, he sure did. And in retrospect, Miller says the moment revealed something that professional political class had somehow failed to notice, Blue Gal. Oops, just never noticed it. Republican voters weren't just weary of the wars. They were furious at the people who had sold them the wars. Republican consultants and commentators, smug inside their own informational bunkers, had wildly misjudged the mood of their own voters. Trump, now whether by instinct or by sheer opportunistic radar, recognized that anger and rode it all the way through the primaries.
For many of his supporters, the term "no foreign wars" became a central article of faith, which is why Trump going to war with Iran on a whim with no justification or explanation or even buildup is splintering the MAGA Confederacy.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I like MAGA Confederacy as the title for this podcast, too. So we got a couple of winners there, Blue Gal. Now, this is like releasing the Epstein files. The No Foreign Wars was one of the few solemn, sacred vows he made to the base that they will not forgive him for breaking. And it's why MAGA howler monkeys like Marjorie Taylor Greene is staying out of the angry MAGA blast zone, reading her voters as well as Trump did in 2016 and saying things like this, quote, "And just like that, we are no longer a nation divided by left and right. Oh, the hell we're not. And we are now a nation divided between those who want to fight wars for Israel and those who just want peace and to be able to afford their bills and health insurance," unquote. Yeah.
And, quote, "We are nearly $40 trillion in debt. How much is this going to cost us? We have seen enough of our American troops dead and murdered for foreign countries," unquote.
Yeah. And this, quote, "I want to ask a question, a serious question. What is in his mind? What is his mental state? If he doesn't think he's going to heaven and he is a man towards the end, he's in the fourth quarter, towards the end of his life, how does that pan out for the rest of us?" Unquote. And it's
Dang.
also, yeah, like bad, real bad. Now, this is also what led Nick Fuentes, that would be Nazi Nick Fuentes, to announce that he will vote Democrat and oppose Republicans. Nazi Nick Fuentes declared that he is entering his villain arc by voting Democrat. Viewing Republicans as enemies he wants to destroy, he expressed indifference to critics labeling him as a Democrat plant or federal agent. Fuentes also mentioned potentially moving to Mexico or perhaps even Vietnam if his side loses in 2028, and said this about Trump and his war against Iran, quote, "You are a demonic force. You are a liar. You are diabolical. You are a traitor." Of course, our first impulse was, shut your fucking Nazi mouth and crawl back into the sewers from whence you came, Nazi Nick.
Yeah. That was my reaction. Fuck off.
Fuck you. Fuck off.
But it also reinforced what Junior Dude has always said about, Fuentes represents that sliver of young American manhoods that's just always incredibly dissatisfied with their lives.
Yeah.
And Trump is now the authoritarian establishment who started a war.
Right.
And so the rebellion comes from the Nazi guy this time. But we still want him to shut his fucking Nazi mouth. Mm-hmm. But however, according to the rules of engagement laid down by our Never Trump supervisors, who tell us what to do, and loudly acclaimed by way too many credulous liberals on Twitter is dead now, isn't Nazi Nick Fuentes now every bit as much of an ally as Liz Cheney, whose previous horrendous lies and slanders we were ordered to ignore? Because, damn it, democracy is hanging by a thread, the enemy of my enemy, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. So we guess, welcome to the resistance, Nazi Nick. We're waiting for the Bulwark podcast to, come to terms with that.
Yeah.
But it's not going to happen in our house.
No, because maybe it's time to talk once again about alliances. Specifically, who gets to be an ally and who gets to be the gatekeeper, more importantly. Who gets to declare someone has been cleansed and is to be welcomed inside the perimeter, and who gets benched and told to pipe the hell down. Now, we have been circling this and talking about this for years, and it won't surprise you that it has nothing to do with who is actually right and who's actually wrong. It has everything to do with who controls the cameras and the microphones. For you big fans of Lord of the Flies out there, this is all about who holds the conch, right?
It's about that and about an idea that comes from medieval Catholic indulgences, the Catholic Church selling forgivenesses. Pay your fee, get your certificate, sins wiped away, Newt Gingrich.
Yeah.
Very profitable business. Those huge cathedrals all over Europe, how do you suppose the church paid for those? That's right. Cathedrals don't build themselves, Driftglass.
No, you got to guilt people into paying for them by threatening them with hell. So you fast forward to the 21st century and American politics in the here and now. And the question is, who gets absolution? Who gets declared purified enough to be allowed inside the tent? By now, I'm sure you're all familiar and maybe even sick of hearing the term the before time that many people, including us, use as shorthand for the pre-Trump universe of American politics and media. For Never-Trumpers, the before time is also the forbidden zone because it's that long, steady march of the Republican Party towards Trump and fascism. But there's also in there what we might also call the in-between time, which roughly follows the contours of the Biden administration. From the 2020 election through Trump's massive campaign to have the 2020 election results thrown out, all the nonstop lying, Trump using Stop the Steal to raise $500 million in 3 months. Don't forget Mike My Pillow Lindell and all of his madness, the call to Brad Raffensperger, the violent Trump-led insurrection, Trump's second impeachment, and the Republican-led refusal to remove him from office and bar him from office permanently, even as they acknowledged that he was in fact guilty as hell.
It was a period of colossal misjudgments about a lot of important matters like the true direction and momentum of the Republican Party, the fundamental barbarity of Republican voters, how little most independent voters, and particularly white male independent voters, cared about our democracy, and how susceptible they all were to relentless MAGA propaganda.
Yeah. During the month of January of 2021, a number of Republicans who'd spent 4 years kissing Trump's ass rose to their feet. I'm sure you all recall this. And gave stirring speeches condemning Trump for attacking this hallowed institution, blah, 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 blah. You will remember that Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy were both caught on tape talking about, first of all, their contempt for Donald Trump and their belief that they wouldn't have to get their hands dirty because Democrats would take care of Trump for them.
And yet just 1 year later, Trump began campaigning on promising to pardon the J6 traitors. It was at a rally in Texas on January 29th, 2022, about a year after the attack. After that, this became a regular theme in Trump's 2024 campaign rhetoric. He frequently described the defendants as hostages and suggested many had been treated unfairly by the Justice Department. During the campaign, he indicated that he would review their cases once back in office, sometimes saying pardons might be handled individually, which of course we know they weren't.
Yeah.
It was a mass pardon of everybody.
Yeah, he didn't even look at them. And it didn't matter. And many of them are now back in prison for other crimes because they're violent thugs.
Child sex crimes, crimes against children.
Yeah.
Today that happened.
And and you all, I mean, this, we won't recapitulate the whole thing, but you remember the January 6th choir just the entire freak show that this turned into. Now, Trump was and is the mad, rabid creation of the Republican Party. And the primary responsibility for putting that mad, rabid animal down, like Kristi Noem's cricket, fell to those Republican politicians who gave such stirring speeches immediately after the J6 insurrection. So the fact that the Republican Party failed so comprehensively to end Trump's political career then and there is the original sin of the in-between time.
Yes, it is. You will remember that initially House leaders negotiated a 9/11-style independent commission to investigate what happened. But Senate Republicans blocked the commission with a what?
What?
A fucking filibuster.
With a filibuster. And this, I remember all the hoo-hoo about the House stuff, but this I'd sort of forgotten about a little bit. This is from NPR, May 28th, 2021. This is just months after the insurrection. Quote, Senate Republicans block a plan for an independent commission on January 6th Capitol riot. Bipartisan legislation to establish an independent commission to investigate the J6 attack on the U.S. Capitol has failed in the Senate as Republicans staged their first filibuster since President Biden took office to block the plan. The final vote Friday was 54-35, but Republicans withheld the votes necessary to bring the bill up for debate. Just 6 senators joined the Democrats, leaving the measure short of the 60 votes needed to proceed. The proposed commission was modeled on the one established to investigate the 9/11 terrorist attacks, with 10 commissioners, 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans, who would have subpoena powers. A Democratic chair and a Republican vice chair would have had to approve all subpoenas with a final report due at the end of the year. But Senate Republicans, led by Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, were deeply skeptical of the commission in the days leading up to the vote. McConnell had dismissed the proposal as a purely political exercise.
Whitewater.
Given that 2 Senate committees had already looked into the event on January 6th. In remarks from the Senate floor Thursday, McConnell called into question how much more a commission would be able to unearth. Well, we found that out, didn't we? A whole bunch more. I do not believe the additional extraneous commission the Democrat leaders would want to uncover crucial new facts or promote healing. The Kentucky Republican said, frankly, I do not believe it is even designed to do that, unquote.
Yes, this was the same Mitch McConnell who just a few months before had called January 6th a violent insurrection and a disgraceful attempt to overturn a legitimate election. He blamed rioters for breaking the law and specifically asserted that President Trump was practically and morally responsible for provoking the events. Quote, the mob was fed lies. They were provoked by the president and other powerful people, unquote. And just 4 months later, there he was engineering the defeat of a bipartisan committee to investigate what he himself had called a violent insurrection.
Yeah. And he wasn't the only one. This NPR now continues, quote, others, such as Senate Minority Whip John Thune, had voiced concern about a commission distracting from the party's message heading into the 2022 midterm elections. Oh no, a distraction. Quote, a lot of our members want to be moving forward, Blue Gal, not looking back to where all the
How'd
bodies.
How'd that work out for them, Driftglass?
Yeah. Well, they don't want, nobody wants to look back because that's where all the bodies are buried, Blue Gal.
Yep.
The South Dakota Republican told CNN last week, anything that gets us rehashing the 2020 election is, I think, a day lost. Former President Trump has been the other vocal critic, surprise, surprise, and has attacked the effort to create the panel as a Democrat trap. Had the commission moved forward, Trump would likely have been called to testify over his role in inciting the insurrection and his administration's response to the attack, unquote. So, no joint committee.
It was filibustered out of existence by Senate Republicans.
Yep.
Great. So it's time for a Plan B, a bipartisan House committee, which you will also remember Kevin McCarthy tried repeatedly to sabotage. He withdrew all of his picks for the committee after Speaker Nancy Pelosi rejected two of his nominees, Jim Banks and Jim Jordan, who were essentially participants in J6 in July 2021.
They were there to blow the thing up.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Oh, to blow up the committee. Absolutely. Yeah. And in January 2022, McCarthy announced he would not voluntarily cooperate with the panel, calling it a sham process on Fox, I'll bet you. And after being formally subpoenaed in May 2022, he continued to refuse, labeling the committee's actions illegal and unconstitutional. Now, look at the calendar. Look at the timeline. There's the insurrection on January 6th. Less than 4 months after that insurrection, Republican Senate leadership killed the vote on creating a joint committee to investigate what happened. 2 months later, Republican House leadership tries to sabotage the House investigation. 6 months after that, Kevin McCarthy announced he would refuse to cooperate with the committee and called it a sham process at almost exactly the same time that Trump is in Texas, effectively launching his 2024 campaign with a promise to pardon the J6 traitors.
So, a year after the bloody insurrection and all their fine speeches, the leadership of the Republican Party was already stepping out of Trump's way and holding the door open for him. And why? Why were they doing this? Because they had made themselves hostage to the monster they themselves had created. Not Trump. He's not the monster. Trump's just an avatar for the monster. No, the monster they created is the voting base of the Republican Party, which is why during the in-between time, it is wild that one of the crutches Republican elites leaned on to avoid doing anything about the monster they'd created was faith that those same depraved voters would never make the same choice again.
They had a lot of faith in those voters. Republicans used to say that the three-legged stool of the GOP consisted of a coalition of fiscal conservatives, social conservatives, and national security hawks. So it's hard to understand why former Republicans are beefing, because Trump has actually delivered on most of those things. Massive tax cuts, a Supreme Court that overturned Roe, and war, more war.
Yeah. And that's how we know this is all bullshit, because we know that the real three-legged stool the Republican rests on is this. First, Merck's Law. Republicans can be as reckless and lawless and deranged as they wish, and it's up to the Democrats to try to restrain them and their worst impulses and clean up the mess that they make after them.
Second, a pathological inability to see their own party as it truly is, a mob of bigots and imbeciles who have been primed by decades of right-wing lies and propaganda to love Sarah Palin, and that prepped them for the arrival of someone like Trump.
Yeah. And the third is the most important arrow in their quiver, I think, and it's a term I coined way back in the before time in 2010. strategic forgettery. This is from an article in The Atlantic by McKay Coppins. And the date is very important here because it was published at the very dawn of the in-between time on January 18th, 2021, less than 2 weeks after the January 6th insurrection. And it became very quickly one of the most widely cited early analysis of how the Republicans would respond after January 6th, because, this is important, it said what all the Beltway pundits had always known about the Republican Party, but which no one but a handful of liberal bloggers would ever dare to say out loud.
And it begins like this, quote, "As Donald Trump lurches through the disastrous final days of his presidency, Republicans are just beginning to survey the wreckage of his reign. Their party has been gutted. Their leader is reviled. And after 4 years of excusing every presidential affront to conservative values, their credibility is shot. How will the GOP recover from the complicity and the corruption of the Trump era? To many Republicans, the answer is simple. Pretend it never happened," unquote.
Yeah. Which came as no surprise to any liberal blogger who had been through.
Anyone who understood that that's exactly how Fox operates when an administration turns over.
Yeah.
Oh, Bush isn't president anymore. Now we're talking about Obama. You can't criticize Bush.
No, and it never happened.
And then, of course, and we're still blaming Biden for everything that's wrong in March of the following year.
Oh, we're still bitching about Robert Bork not getting on the Supreme Court.
Right,
They have a long memory for every little slight that they've ever suffered.
Right,
but
right,
for everything
right.
else, it's down the memory hole. The article is entitled, if you want to look it up, "The Coming Republican Amnesia." And it ends like this, quote, "Terry Sullivan, who ran Marco Rubio's presidential campaign in 2016, told me he was unimpressed by this sudden rush to righteous indignation. The newfound outrage from former Trump supporters rings a bit hollow, given how quiet most of them were during Charlottesville and countless other escapades," he said. 47 months of blind loyalty followed by 1 month of conscience doesn't earn you much more than a Mick Mulvaney Profile and Courage Award. Remember Mick Mulvaney? Sullivan was less certain, though, about whether the revisionism would work. "I don't expect the voters will treat them any more kindly than the historians, but I've been wrong before. After all, some predicted that the Republicans who worked for George W. Bush, especially the architects of the Iraq War, would be shunned once he left office. Instead, many of them have settled into respectable and lucrative perches as commentators, lobbyists, and elder statesmen. As long as the cable news bookers keep calling, redemption is always available," unquote.
And there it is.
Yeah.
This verbal pundit tick that speaks about voters as if voters were a single monolithic thing.
Yes, and we did a whole show about this, though, about the voters and the American people and the public as being treated as one giant lump that's a monolith. But it's not. There are Republican voters who are bigots and imbeciles. There are those lovable independent voters.
Independent.
Who are either Republicans who are hiding out in camouflage and waiting for the coast to clear, or they're just so bloody and decisive that the idea of having to take a stand in favor of democracy and against fascism makes them break out in hives.
Don't forget Driftglass. Both sides are equally bad.
Oh, yes, we know this. Both sides are equally bad. We must all move to the center, Blue Gal. We must all charge towards the center. And then there are the Democrats, who are neither of these things. And as we found out, Republican voters and a whole lot of independents were more than willing to buy enough of Trump's bullshit that they renominated him again in 2020 and then again in 2024. So now back to the question of who gets absolution and who gets a flogging.
Remember, for 4 years, Liz Cheney was perfectly content to work shoulder to shoulder with the man who won the presidency, thanks in no small part to essentially calling her daddy and her daddy's boss bloodthirsty, lying, warmongering scum. That was what Trump did. Mm-hmm. Because Liz Cheney knew the game. Whatever Trump said or did, no matter how racist or insane, the real enemy is always the left. Don't forget that Liz Cheney was in the Rose Garden cheering Trump on when the House voted to dismantle Obamacare.
Oh yeah, no, she was right up there.
She went to the beer party in the Rose Garden.
And worse. She has
and
done
worse. Oh, and she's done much worse. Always the Democrats. Cheney built her career troweling out all the usual slander about us dirty hippies that her base wanted to hear, and was only too happy to escalate their grotesque lies after Trump rose to power.
Yeah, and it's an enduring feature of the Never Trumpers that they demand that we liberals forgive and forget the horrific things that their fellow recently formed Republicans actually said and did, while at the same time reserving to themselves the privilege to go right on never forgiving and never forgetting Democrats for things that we never actually said or did.
We lefties are scolded again and again by former Republicans who, with the support and blessing of the legacy media, now hold megaphones 1,000 times bigger than we ever had. We were told forcefully and repeatedly that we absolutely must shut up about the horrific murderous lies Liz Cheney routinely spread about Democrats while she was in Republican leadership under Trump.
But these same former Republicans will obsess endlessly about a 90-second land acknowledgement at a weekend DNC strategy session in 2025. They wrote columns about it, which are cited in other columns, which become the subject of podcasts, which then spawn more columns. So, first question, obvious question, how the hell would our Never Trump allies even know about something this trivial? And I will tell you why. It's because Fox News talked about it incessantly. Megyn Kelly repurposed her show at least 3 different times on this topic. And The Blaze declared that the Democrats have gone insane. So at this point, right, this is just another, oh my God, Obama wore a tan suit. Oh my God, Obama likes fancy mustard. Oh my God, the crazy communist Kenyan Obama thinks inflating your tires correctly will solve all our energy problems. Just a bit of catnip for the bigots and imbeciles who think Fox News is news and who jerk off to Megyn Kelly's hate porn. For the fascists to boost bullshit like this out of the Fox News bunker and into the wider world, they were going to need help. They would need to manufacture indignation. They need to make their manufactured indignation appear at least bipartisan. They would need some cranky octogenarian Democrat who is 20 years past his sell-by date to pop off about how awful this insignificant little moment was. And they needed this Fox News headline from August 28th, 2025. James Carville slams DNC over land acknowledgement. And now we're off to the races. Now, former Weekly Standard and the Dispatch writer Andrew Egger could dive right in and write all about it in the Bulwark. And then Mark Leibovich could roll that into his Advice to Democrats article in The Atlantic, which is centered entirely around why Democrats should be picking fights with other Democrats, a column in which The Bulwark, again, Sarah Longwell, lost her shit and began ranting about how useless Democrats are, which got, in turn, Leibovich invited back on The Bulwark so that he and Tim Miller could repeat the whole fucking thing all over again. And you'll never guess who has picked up that torch now. Now, we'd like you to write down your answers and fold them over so no one can see them. And we'll be revisiting this in just a few minutes.
But right now, let's all marvel at the stark contrast between how Never Trumpers treat anyone who dares to speak of the horrific things people like Liz Cheney said and did before the Never Trumpers absolved them. Mm-hmm. And how, at the drop of a hat, they will tear into Democrats over some trivial bullshit because Fox News is still their assignment editor. They do not forgive or forget trivia like this. Instead, they pamper and baby their own pet Republican stereotypes of Democrats and will use their giant megaphones to bludgeon us with it over and over again. We've asked our Never Trump friends this over and over again, and the answer is usually some version of, well, they're on our side now. Past misdeeds should be overlooked. Sit down and shut up. And once again, Liz Cheney is just the clearest example of that.
Yeah, because before January 6th, she said some grotesque things about liberals and Democrats. These are not abstract policy disagreements. Right. This wasn't just mild rhetoric. She repeated the full Rush Limbaugh vocabulary, the Fox News playbook, casual, hateful slander, calling Democrats baby murderers. And she was very explicit, not talking about the unborn. No. She's talking about living babies. Democrats murder living babies. Democrats are the face of pure evil. She said it. She said it on camera, said it repeatedly. She said it comfortably. She was perfectly comfortable with that vocabulary. And then she hit her red line, which was insurrection. You can't overthrow the government. Everything else is fine. Tax cuts and judges and deregulation, that's all fine. But not insurrection. And when she crossed over that line, we were told, welcome her with open arms. Democracy is hanging by a goddamn thread. We need all the allies we can get. But there was no apology. There was no recanting. There was no I was wrong. There was no atonement. And when we asked, but isn't she going to retract any of that? Isn't she going to just say she was sorry? We were told that we were the problem, that we didn't understand the stakes, that we needed to sit down and shut up.
Yeah, it just makes me think, I really wish Kamala Harris had won in 2024.
Yeah, we all do.
But she watched too much goddamn Morning Joe.
Yeah, she did.
That was a problem. And sitting on the stage with Liz Cheney over and over again and doing a tour with Liz Cheney about how we're all coming together to save democracy did not serve her.
No. It didn't. It didn't buy one Republican vote.
Yeah.
No.
Meanwhile, Cheney was given the megaphone. And don't you dare question why, because the enemy of my enemy sit down right next to our candidate, Liz, and hold, a panel discussion. There was even that wild upside-down moment when Democrats were urged to vote for Liz Cheney in Wyoming, as if progressive support in a state with about 11 Democratic voters, I'm exaggerating there, but really, slightly. Was going to redeem the Republican Party, as if electing one good Republican would flip the whole thing back. That's all we have to do. Our answer here was a blunt no. One more Republican vote in the House was for Mike Johnson as Speaker, and that's still one more Republican vote for Mike Johnson as Speaker. Their party was already gone.
Yeah, it was weird listening to Never Trumpers with big platforms just practically demanding that Democrats vote for good Republicans.
Yeah.
Like, dude, there aren't any. There aren't any at all. But here's what really happened. Former Republicans took over the narrative space. Not because liberals are wrong or anything like that, but because nobody in corporate media wants to hear liberals say, we were right all along. That makes people very uncomfortable. What they want are redeemed Republicans. They want conversion stories. So MSNBC, now MS Now, became a kind of Republican reputation rehab factory. Endless airtime for all the former Republicans you can swing a cat to, telling us all that we Democrats were doing it all wrong. The people who lost their own party because they couldn't see what was right in front of them were suddenly positioned as the only responsible adults in our party. And they established this precedent. They get to decide who gets welcomed in. If you're a current or former Republican and you say mean things about Donald Trump, you're an ally. If you're a liberal who's been saying the same things for 20 years, you're just background noise.
Which brings us to the logical endpoint. If the only requirement for absolution is that you said something critical about Trump, then where does that stop?
Mm-hmm.
Nazi Nick Fuentes has now gone on the record calling Donald Trump everything but a child of God. Traitor, liar, he's going to vote for Democrats now. Does that make him an ally? Or do we just ignore all the Nazi stuff? Because that's the rule by which we were told we had to abide, Liz Cheney calling me a baby killer. Because the stakes were too high to do otherwise.
Yeah. And there's no limiting factor on this rule.
No.
And if they start saying, well, Nick Fuentes is too far, well, okay, then you've created the rule and you've created the limiting factor without talking to any of us.
Yeah.
Which is grotesque. And this is exactly what we warned about from the very beginning. And if you're not familiar with it, there was a Monty Python sketch called The Visitor. Visitors, plural, I'm sorry, that captures this perfectly. Years ago, our protagonist casually told someone he met in a pub that if you're ever in the area, drop by or something like that. Years later, this guy shows up without any warning at a very inconvenient time when Graham Chapman's trying to make time with a lady, which is funny because Graham Chapman was very gay.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy barges in and he won't leave and then says, I hope you don't mind, I invited some friends. And progressively, worse people start filling the house because each new arrival has arrived with someone worse than themselves along as well. The house fills up, It becomes uncontrollable. The host finally screams, "Get out!" And then John Cleese shoots him. And that's what happens when you never define the boundaries of what is acceptable.
Yep. Right
And
now, the loudest voices in the anti-Trump coalition are former Republicans. They are making the rules and telling us liberals to sit quietly in the corner and forget about the monstrous past slanders while they obsess over trivia that they refuse to forget. But we don't need to worry too much about who is being allowed to speak in our name, because help is on the way, Driftglass.
Yay!
Yeah. Open up your little answer sheet. The cavalry is coming. It is the dawn of the 5th day, and Gandalf has arrived. And who is our Gandalf? Listen and learn.
Democrats' post-Obama drift left must be reversed. Starting about 2010, there was an organized, well-funded effort to move Democrats left. Left-wing groups elevated rhetoric and ideas that no doubt get cheers at a DSA meeting, but they seem designed to drive away the middle. Defund the police, the Green New Deal that would ban fossil fuels by 2030, open borders, modern monetary theory that says deficits or inflation are good, a $44 trillion government takeover of healthcare, land acknowledgements, identity politics, cancel culture, and more.
That was from the extremely well-funded Third Way grifters, who held a conference just a few days ago demanding that Democrats move to the middle. That's right, Blue Gal. Complaining that Democrats are in disarray and how if we didn't all hustle like crazy to get to this non-existent center, we were all doomed. And they checked every single goddamn box, didn't they? Even land acknowledgements. Gee, I wonder where the Third Way goofs heard about land acknowledgements, Blue Gal. Now, what this clown is actually describing is just a grab bag of Mad Lib nonsense designed to scare wealthy donors and corporations out of their money. There are slogans in there that no Democrat ever ran on, but which were amplified to the moon by the Republican propaganda machine.
Yeah, because it is classist in a way to say bigots and imbeciles in the Republican Party. Just remember, those rich Republicans who fund this crap are bigots and imbeciles as well.
Oh, and there's plenty
of more money and nicer suits.
There are plenty of wishful thinking centrist Democrats who also want this all to be true. They're desperate. The people who read David Brooks and think,
oh, he's making a lot of sense.
If only.
Yes.
If only.
Yeah. So let's go through this. There's Medicare for All, which, by the way, Data for Progress shows has majority support, with the 2025-26 data showing 58 to 65% of voters favoring a system that guarantees coverage for everyone, including strong support among Democrats, 78%, and independents, 71%. Its popularity remains high, even when described as replacing private insurance with a government plan.
That level of approval doesn't sound like a trillion, zillion dollar thing that just is government run. It sounds like a very popular program that the middle would really appreciate someone passing into law.
Yep. Because
and then, of
people
course,
really like that government health insurance.
They really do. Yeah. I know I do. I'm biased because I'm getting it now, but let me tell you.
I'm 27 months away. I can't wait. Not that I'm counting.
Counting the hours, counting the minutes. And then, of course, is the slam on the Green New Deal, which, again, is just a relentless Republican talking point that these guys are just repeating. The Green New Deal did not contain a fossil fuel ban. It did not name a specific year like 2030 for eliminating oil and gas or coal, and it did not create any enforceable regulations. These are all Republican lies being repeated verbatim by these centrist grifters.
Yeah. And I will say Green New Deal has a really bad branding problem.
It does.
It sounds very good to people who remember Roosevelt.
Right.
Or know their history. But we really need to go anti-pollution on this. Just, clean air is what.
Clean air.
If you went clean air, you'd have a much better chance at doing something here. But as for identity politics and cancel culture, Which party is now an entirely white nationalist identity party, Driftglass? Which party bans books, sacks journalists, attacks the free press from the Oval Office every day, and buys whole broadcast and social media networks in order to shut down dissent and cancel opposing views?
Well, I think it's probably not the Democrats, is it, Blue Gal?
No, it's not.
It sure as hell ain't the Democrats.
No.
Yeah, one party, I'm sorry, I don't want to drag us into a long conversation about what bullshit cancel culture is, but the entire Republican Party is now all about white identity and canceling people they don't agree with or like.
Canceling people and locking people up who are citizens of this country. Yeah.
At a scale that the I don't know, Harvard's not fair. At the scale the Columbia College speech code enforcers could never have dreamed of.
Yeah. Let's do a news roundup.
Yeah, clear a palate. Let's do a news roundup.
This is the big news today. I know you've been waiting, folks. Kristi Noem has been fired and replaced by the dumbest U.S. senator alive.
Hey, winning. So much winning.
From Donald J. Trump, quote, "I am pleased to announce that the highly respected United States Senator from the great state of Oklahoma, Mark Wayne Mullen, I call him Mulligan. Yeah, Mullen, will become the United States Secretary of Homeland Security, DHS, effective March 31st, 2026. The current secretary, Kristi Noem, who has served us well and has had numerous and spectacular results, especially on the border, will be moving to be special envoy for the Shield of the Americas." And Driftglass texted me today and said, "Is that a condom?"
That's some sort of Trump-branded condom?
Yeah, the Shield of the Americas. Our new security initiative in the Western Hemisphere, we are announcing on Saturday in Doral, Florida. I wonder if it's a war on Cuba.
I wonder if he's going to do it from the 18th hole.
Maybe the ex-wife isn't buried down there. She's up in New Jersey. But anyway, I thank Kristi for her service at, in quotation marks, homeland, unquote.
And this is from our governor, J.B. Pritzker of Illinois.
Hey, Kristi Noem, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Here's your legacy: corruption and chaos, parents and children tear-gassed, moms and nurses, U.S. citizens getting shot in the face. Now that you're gone, don't think you get to just walk away. I guarantee you, you will still be held accountable.
From Senator Cory Booker, quote, "Kristi Noem has been fired, good riddance, but let's be clear, one personnel change does not fix a broken system. Until this out-of-control agency is held accountable, I will not vote to give it another dollar," unquote. From the professional left, Trump did her like she did cricket. Thoughts and prayers, Kristi.
Thoughts and prayers. Good luck in your next adventure.
I got to say, though, Chuck Schumer also had a very similar, he's a no vote, and he wants absolute reform of DHS.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people replied, yeah, you need to just wipe it out. It needs to go and start from the ground up. But I sent something on Blue Sky about, she can be taught.
Well, that does not jibe with this charge to the center that we're supposed to make.
I know.
I mean, how are you going to heal this country if you're not moving to the center?
What is the centrist position on shooting a white woman in the face in Minnesota? How do you move to the center from that?
We'd rather not talk about that. We'd rather talk about land acknowledgements that we heard about from some place that we can't remember. That everyone's talking about, Blue Gal. All the kids
I
down
heard about it at the hairdresser.
At the hairdresser. That's right. I heard about the hairdresser. That's all the ladies are talking about.
Right.
Land acknowledgements. Now, from Senator John Fetterman, there's a very different reaction to this development. Quote, "As a member of the Homeland Security Committee and ranking member of Subcommittee on Border Security, I'm not sure how many fellow Democrats will vote to support our colleague, Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, as the next DH secretary, but I am an I, as in yes," unquote.
There's got to be some really good pot in the green room at Fox.
Pot doesn't do that, honey.
Something does it to make him want to be this guy.
I told you, when God closes a mansion, he opens a Fetterman.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And from Fox News, more Fettermania. Quote, Fetterman blasts Iran strike critics, Ayatollah's apologists. Let's see who grieves for that garbage. As Democrats line up to denounce President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's joint strikes on Iran's ruling regime, Senator John Fetterman, Democrat of Pennsylvania, is doing the opposite, forcefully defending the operation and rebuking members of his own party who call it reckless. His stance is widening. Really? That's how they put this? His stance is widening a visible fracture inside the party over how far to back Israel amid escalating regional tensions. One guy is a widening visible fracture among Democrats. It's Democrats in disarray, Driftglass.
Oh, not Democrats in disarray. I hate when Democrats are in disarray. Meanwhile, Ken Paxton holds Texas Republicans hostage by making demands of the U.S. Senate. This is from The Hill. Quote, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, Republican, suggested Thursday that he would be open to dropping out of the hotly contested Texas Senate primary against Senator John Cornyn, Republican from Texas, if Senate Republicans met several conditions. First, I want $1 billion delivered. Now, Paxton said on Thursday he would consider exiting the race if Senate leadership eliminated the filibuster, the 60-vote threshold needed to clear most legislation in the upper chamber, and passed a bill that would require voters to show proof of citizenship to register to vote. The shift from Paxton comes after President Trump on Wednesday said he plans to endorse in the Senate GOP primary soon and called for whomever he doesn't endorse to drop out of the race. Unquote.
He hasn't made up his mind yet who he's going to endorse.
Okay, who brought me more gold bars?
Yeah.
Who's got the gold bars? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The whole thing reminds me of that satirical newspaper headline I read this week and posted of woman searches frantically for how men find the audacity.
Yeah, well.
The Senate has to reform the filibuster for me to drop out of this Senate race that's in a runoff. Mm-hmm. And I'm just a corrupt AG.
Oh, just as corrupt as they come. As corrupt
as they come. Yes.
Yeah. A crook.
All right. From Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I have to share this. Quote, effective immediately, I have ordered the United States Development Finance Corporation, DFC, to provide at a very reasonable price political risk insurance and guarantees for the financial security of all maritime trade, especially energy, traveling through the Gulf. This will be available to all shipping lines. If necessary, the United States Navy will begin escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz as soon as possible. No matter what, the United States will ensure the free flow of energy to the world. The United States' economic and military might is the greatest on earth. More actions to come. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump, unquote. Mm-hmm. Translation, U.S. taxpayers are now subsidizing private shipping companies because of Donald Trump's illegal war in Iran. And also, meantime, Driftglass, American citizens stranded in this region are trying to call the State Department helpline and being asked to spell the name Oman by someone at the State Department who's answering the phone.
I know a different four-letter word that they might want to spell out to the State Department.
Yeah.
This was
one of the people told the person who was stranded, an American citizen holding an American passport, stranded in one of these countries, which was left nameless in the article, told them to stop their whining and hung up on them. Fuck these people.
Yeah.
They are not pro-America.
No.
And they did not do any preparation for this.
No, this not at all.
I've said several times on Blue Sky about, them bombing Dubai. That wasn't supposed to happen. Trump has holdings in Dubai. And Iranians knew that. Mm-hmm. And it is not a civilian target when it's Trump's money they're bombing.
Right.
They knew what they were doing.
Uh-huh.
So, and Trump doesn't. And that's scary.
Well, and as I've heard repeated from several different sources, when you go after a terrorist outfit, let's say, they have their sort of organization. Iran has a government.
Yeah.
With a succession plan. With people, with contingencies on contingencies. And however weak they are or strong they are, I have no idea.
Right.
But I do know that governments have plans, except ours apparently, which is run by a fucking lunatic. And that decapitating the regime is not the solution. It will only result in catastrophic chaos and a power vacuum, or just the next 6 guys who are in line, who are the Secretary of Agriculture or whatever, will become the leader of the country and will be just as hard line because that's why they're in government in the first place. So, I mean, no thought at all was given to this. This is from, by the way, Crooks and Liars. This is our end of the pipe. Quote, U.S. troops told Iran war is for, quote, Armageddon, unquote, and the return of Jesus. Oh, good. Everyone look busy because Jesus is coming. More than 110 similar complaints about commanders in every branch of the military has been logged by the Military Religious Freedom Foundation from Saturday morning through Monday night, unquote.
So that's 110 complaints, not 110 generals or leaders.
Commanders. Right. But it's across every...
Inside those groups saw somebody say that they 110 of them complained.
And it's across every branch of the military.
Wow.
So, it is endemic. And, this doesn't come as a surprise. We might recall exactly how much Christian fundamentalist right-wing evangelical bullshit was exposed during the Iraq War.
Yep.
When people started talking about crusades and whatnot, and putting Christian
who is now the ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee,
and putting Christian inscriptions on rifles and so forth.
Right.
So it doesn't surprise anyone that people who are in favor of the end of the world,
right,
and think
looking forward to it.
That's how they bring Jesus back.
Right.
Are thrilled about dropping a grenade into an open tanker full of gasoline in the Middle East.
Right.
Because
any time, because that brings Jesus back. Yep.
Right.
Lunatics. From the Alt National Park Service social media account, this heartwarming story. Quote, Gregory Kent Bovino is now under criminal investigation by the Hennepin County Attorney's Office for his conduct during Operation Metro Surge. On January 21st, 2026, Bovino was filmed during near Muller Park in Minneapolis's Lowry Hall East neighborhood, deploying a smoke canister into a crowd of protesters and bystanders. On March 2nd, Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty announced the launch of the Transparency and Accountability Project, or TAP, a new initiative reviewing 17 separate incidents involving what her office described as potential unlawful behavior by federal agents during Operation Metro Surge. Bovino's actions at Muller Park are among the cases under review. The county has also launched a public portal inviting residents to submit videos, photos, and witness accounts related to potentially illegal conduct by federal agents during the Operation Metro Surge, unquote. Thank you guys for listening. We love you.
We appreciate it.
Hang in there. Thanks for supporting us.
We're going to be zipping up to Chicago pretty soon.
Uh-huh. And you might actually be on WCPT at 11 o'clock on Saturday. Everybody ought to tune into the Hal Sparks show.
Might.
See if you're there or not. I don't know.
I don't have the address. I don't think Hal likes me anymore. We don't agree on much.
Like you.
We don't agree on much. I mean, he's just blah blah blah. And you know what? I'm always telling Hal, because we talk a lot. Hal, you got to move to the center, man. You got to move to the center. Or we're doomed.
If we don't find a way at the party to move to the center. All right. On that note, each week we post to our Patreon page and website an internet kitty sent in by you, the listeners. This week's internet kitty is Yana. Yana has very recently moved from being an outside feral kitty into her forever home. She was found in a snowbank this winter, and she had lost much of her ears and her tail. Oh. But that doesn't stop her from being a brave explorer in her new house. She loves cuddles and demands that her food and her water is freshly poured. And of course, Yana only eats freshly poured cat food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve Pet Store Perfection or Dollar Store Dreck, your cat will move on into the warm house And by the way, in this picture, she's also got a little ceramic kitty next to her. So she has a ceramic kitty friend in there. And demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured.
I think we're missing out on something here, Blue Gal.
What?
We've totally missed the freshly poured water, cat water.
We
market.
have.
The whole market is wide open. It's wide open.
We could have freshly poured water dishes.
Just freshly poured water. We'll send you little cups of water for like $19.95. It's artisanal, locally sourced water.
Could we print a label with your cat's name on the little water bottle?
That's a lot of work.
To make it personalized.
That's a lot of work.
But that brings it up. If you get personalized, it's $35 a bottle.
No, we'll send it with a blank label on the side. You just write your cat's name on it and send us a picture because we care. I think we're missing like 50% of the market. We just didn't even think of it. So thank you for Yana.
It's a good thing this is a fake sponsor, I got to say. Every day I thank God that it's a fake sponsor. Freshly poured, freshly poured. Oh, my Lord, it's freshly poured. And you can visit Yana at our Patreon page, patreon.com/ProLeftPod, or our website, proleftpod.com. And you can send your internet kitty, dog, or other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, where you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write to us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service, go Postal Unions, letter on the air unless you say otherwise.
As you might be able to tell from this podcast, we're a little tired and punchy right now. It's been a long week and a long day. And you know what would be really delicious right now? A cup of gourmet coffee right about now. And we just happen to have a gourmet coffee guideline that might interest you. If you're able to treat yourself to an espresso-based beverage, we ask you consider treating us to one as well. Because this isn't charity. This is how we support the work we do. If you can spare just $5 a month or more, we'd be very grateful for your support at patreon.com/ProLeftPod or on Venmo, where you look us up as The Professional Left. Please also help continue our growth spurt. We're getting more and more people every day. Greatest ever, Blue Gal. Biggest, greatest audience ever.
All right.
If you love this podcast, and we know that a lot of you do, introduce it to a friend. We think they'll like it too. And thank you very much for doing that.
Many of you know that I'm answering phones at a medical center these days, and I would never talk about any experience with any patient or anything like that on the air. But I think I can talk about this. Today, I was just looking at my computer screen, and it showed for the schedule for a doctor, Monday, completely booked. Tuesday, completely booked. Wednesday, Thursday, completely booked. And on Friday, there were many openings. And I turned to my colleague and I said, what happened to that doctor? Did he have a bunch of cancellations so that he's got like 4 or 5 open slots on tomorrow? And he turned to me and he said, Fran, that's next week.
Yep.
That's what's happening to our healthcare system right now.
It's overbooked.
It's being absolutely taxed to the hilt.
Yep.
And all of the and it's that doesn't even get into the whole insurance situation.
No, just resources that are available, the amount of time and expertise that are available are precious and limited.
It's strained beyond belief. And these are good people who have a lot of compassion for sick people and want to help them. And it's insane. It's insane. So thank you again for supporting us, making this show possible. And Driftglass, how are the internet kitties doing this week?
Well, look, the internet kitties are wondering, now that Kristi Noem has been sacked, who gets custody of the his and hers bidets on her government-funded plane?
Let's think about living. Let's think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the bopping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the whine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with a switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is produced and recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright DGBG Productions. ProLeftPod.com.